Marine archaeologists have discovered two Danish slave shipwrecks of Costa Rica. Let's deep dive.
You know those stories about finding something absolutely incredible where you'd least expect it?
Yeah.
Well, picture this. A literal yellow brick road. Seriously. But not in Oz. This one's under the sea.
Okay, intriguing. Where are you going with this?
That's actually where our story kicks off today. And it leads to, well, a pretty astonishing discovery, the unearthing of two long-lost Danish slave ships.
Ah, the Fridericus Quartus and the Christianus Quintus.
Yeah.
These ships, they vanished, what, centuries ago?
Yeah.
Sank off Central America in 1710.
Exactly. And for ages, nobody knew where they ended up, just vanished into, maritime legend.
A complete mystery.
Yeah.
A sort of forgotten piece of a much bigger, darker story.
And apparently for the locals near Cahuita National Park in Costa Rica, these underwater wrecks were just kind of there, part of the landscape almost. And the initial thought, the local story, was that maybe they were pirate ships.
Right, you hear that sometimes. Adds a bit of romance, I suppose.
It does, but it completely missed the actual historical significance of what was lying down there.
It really did.
Yeah.
So what changed? When did people start looking closer?
Well, the big turning point seems to have been 2015. Some American marine archaeologists were working at one of the sites, and they found these distinctive yellow bricks.
Yellow bricks, okay. Sounds simple, but I guess that was the clue.
It seems like it. Like finding that first breadcrumb, it was a small thing, but it sparked everything, got researchers really digging deeper. What was so special about these bricks?
Well, that's what we're diving into. These weren't just, any old bricks.
Right. So fast forward to 2023, a proper underwater excavation gets underway. This time, it's researchers from the National Museum of Denmark and the Viking Ship Museum.
Okay, serious stuff.
Totally. And they weren't just looking around, they were meticulously collecting samples, wood fragments, more of those yellow bricks, of course, and even bits of old clay pipes.
Got it. So they're gathering all this physical evidence.
Exactly. And that really brings us to the core of our deep dive today. We want to unpack all that evidence, figure out how they knew these were the Fridericus Quartus and Christianus Quintus.
And beyond just identifying the ships, what does this discovery actually tell us? What does it reveal about this often overlooked part of history?
Okay, so let's start with those yellow bricks. They really catch the eye. They weren't just cargo or ballast, were they?
No, not at all. The analysis showed they are specifically Flensburg yellow bricks. That's a type made in, the Flensburg Fjord area in Denmark.
So Brick Fjord. Okay.
Yeah, that whole region was a massive center for making and trading bricks back in the 18th century. So finding those bricks at the wreck site, it's a huge indicator of Danish origin.
A pretty direct link.
A very direct link. And what's really fascinating is that further analysis pinpointed the clay sources even more precisely to places like Illerstrand and Egernsund.
Wow.
That's like a geological fingerprint pointing straight back to Denmark.
So the bricks themselves are already building a strong case. But it wasn't just about the materials, was it? It was also about when the ships were built. That's where the wood comes in.
Precisely. The team did tree ring dating, dendrochronology on oak wood samples they recovered from one of the wrecks.
Right, counting the rings.
Essentially, yeah. Analyzing the growth patterns to figure out when the tree was cut down. Yeah. And the results, they show the trees were likely felled somewhere in the western Baltic region.
Okay, and the timing.
Probably between 1690 and 1695.
Huh. And doesn't that time frame line up almost perfectly with when records say these ships were actually constructed?
It lines up exactly. It's a perfect match.
But there's more to the wood story, isn't there? Something quite chilling, actually, that connects back to the historical accounts of what happened to one of the ships, the Fridericus Quartus.
Yes, that's right. The wood samples showed clear signs of charring, soot, burn marks.
Wow.
And the historical records clearly state that the Fridericus Quartus was deliberately set on fire by its own crew after it ran aground, presumably to prevent capture or salvage.
So, centuries later, they find physical proof of that fire etched into the ship's timbers.
Exactly. It's physical evidence bearing the literal scars of that event described in documents from 1710. It's a powerful, chilling confirmation of those narratives. More than just dating, it connects directly to the ship's final moments.
That's incredible, a direct link across centuries. Okay, so we have the main structure, the bricks, the wood. But I gather they also found smaller items, artifacts, that helped seal the deal. You mentioned clay pipes.
Yes, these little clay pipes, It seemed quite ordinary, but they turned out to be another really important piece of the puzzle.
Oh, so.
Well, they were identified as Dutch-produced pipes, and that was actually very common. Danish ships used a lot of Dutch goods back then.
Okay, so that fits.
It fits. But what's really neat is the specifics, the size, the shape, the little decorative patterns on them. All those details suggest they were made shortly before 1710.
Just before the ship sank.
Right around that time. It's like finding someone's coffee cup from yesterday. These everyday objects help pinpoint that moment in time.
Okay, so let's recap the evidence trail. We've got specifically Danish bricks from the Flensburg area.
We've got Baltic oak, dated to the exact construction period, showing fire damage that matches the history of the Fridericus Quartus.
Check.
And then we have these Dutch pipes, typical for Danish ships, also dating to just before the sinking in 1710.
Correct.
Taken all together. I mean, that sounds pretty conclusive, doesn't it?
It really is. Very strong. David Gregory, who was one of the co-researchers on this, put it quite plainly. He said, the analyses are very convincing, and we no longer have any doubts that these are the wrecks of the 2 Danish slave ships.
No doubts left.
Pretty much. When you have multiple independent lines of evidence, like the bricks, the wood, the pipes, all pointing to the same conclusion, it leaves very little room for other explanations.
And you get the sense this wasn't just, another interesting project for the archaeologists involved. It sounds like it had a real personal significance.
Oh, absolutely. You can hear it in their comments. Andreas Kallmeyer Bloch, for instance, he spent years investigating these wrecks. He called it the craziest archaeological excavation he's ever been part of.
Crazy in what way? Well, he stressed how important it was, not just as a find, but for the local community in Costa Rica, connecting them to this history. And also its significance for Danish history itself, confirming this really dramatic, known shipwreck event. It creates a tangible link,
Yeah, a physical connection to the past, which I suppose leads us directly to the bigger picture here. This isn't just about finding and identifying 2 specific ships, however interesting that is.
Not at all.
This discovery really casts a spotlight on a difficult but absolutely crucial chapter in Denmark's past, its involvement in the transatlantic slave trade.
Exactly. Finding the Fridericus Quartus and the Christianus Quintus isn't just solving a maritime puzzle. It gives us concrete physical evidence of the brutal reality of that trade.
It moves beyond just dates on a page, like the ban on the trade itself.
Precisely. It connects us to the actual vessels involved, the journeys, the human suffering. It's a stark reminder that while Denmark did ban the transatlantic slave trade relatively early in 1792,
which was early compared to some,
it was. But the institution of slavery itself in the Danish colonies wasn't fully abolished until much later, 1847.
Right. There's often a gap between banning the trade and ending slavery itself.
A significant one. And this discovery, finding these specific ships, forces a more direct engagement with that whole period of Danish history. It could really impact how that history is taught and remembered in Denmark.
And I understand this research isn't happening in isolation. It's tied into a larger initiative at the National Museum of Denmark.
Yes, that's right. It's connected to their new research center, which is called Njord.
Njord. Okay.
And the whole focus of Njord is specifically to explore Danish maritime history by excavating shipwrecks, not just in Danish waters, but around the world.
So this Costa Rica find is a major example of what they're setting out to do.
Exactly. It's a pretty significant early success for the Njord Center, showing the kind of crucial insights these underwater investigations can potentially uncover about Denmark's global maritime past.
So wrapping this up, what's the takeaway for us, for you listening today? It feels like more than just, an interesting bit of historical detective work.
I think it is. It's a really powerful reminder that history isn't always just sitting in archives or written down in books. Sometimes it's hidden, submerged, literally lying beneath the waves.
Waiting to be found.
Waiting to be found, waiting to be brought back to light. The story of these 2 ships, revealed by what you called that underwater yellow brick road, it really compels us to face the complexities of the past.
And to remember the human stories that are embedded in these wrecks, these archaeological sites.
Absolutely, the human cost.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What other yellow brick roads might be out there? What other forgotten stories and hidden histories are just waiting deep beneath the surface of the oceans, waiting for us to find them?
It's a vast world down there, full of undiscovered history.
Definitely something to ponder long after we finish this deep dive.
Comment your thoughts on the story of 2 ships discovered. Thanks.